Wanna Bet, Chapter 2. The Bet. 4 months later. Good morning, Proby. Jethro smiled. He had joined NCIS only a few weeks ago, and Mike had saddled him with the nickname Proby. It stands for Probationary Officer, he had said. The pack was still a looming threat, and yet it was not a worry that bothered Jethro. If they came for him, the other team members would have his back. That was something he could trust. Although, in the back of his mind, he hoped that they would be caught as soon as possible, so that his life could finally take some semblance of normal. The cause behind his joining NCIS? Jethro had never been tied down to anyone since he had been bitten. For these people, Youkuro, Ducky, Mike, and Jen, to take him in and unconditionally consider him a friend was a testimony that there were people out there who didn't hate people with supernatural aspects, and gave him a respect for them he had never considered giving before, getting to know them better. In the past 4 months, he had gotten to know them better. Most of his time as Proby, he spent more time with Youkuro and Jen, Mike being the senior field agent, a complete workaholic, though he had to admit he liked and respected his boss for how well he put up with suspects' bullshit. Right away, he and Jenny Shepard got along, for all of 5 minutes, and then they were at each other's throats. The girl was obstinate and impulsive, quick on her feet, good with a gun, and had a wit as sharp as a dagger and as cold as ice. In his opinion, all bad qualities in a woman. She thought him rude and far too wild to be a gentleman, as he had been living on the streets and in the woods for 5 years. He liked Youkuro a bit better, though he had become more of a teacher than a friend, seeing as he was team leader, though he acted more like a Proby than Jethro. The vampire was kinder and more understanding than the fury redhead, and was willing to listen to anyone, even Ducky, as he went on about his travels and the injuries he had encountered. He was obviously intelligent, and although always the one to tell Mike when he suspected something in a case. Always trust your instincts, Jethro. Your gut is as valuable a weapon as your gun or teeth. He'd remind him, and then the younger agent would take a closer look at the evidence or a suspect and see what the vampire saw. Ducky was the only one he had become friends with. The Emmy was full of tales of far-off places and astounding adventures. Most Jethro suspected were more far-fetched than Ducky would admit. He was the first to make the young werewolf smile, and his ability to speak to the dead, and the dead to speak back, fascinated him to the point where he could be found in autopsy when a fresh body came, sitting on a table and watching as Ducky did his work. "Morning, Mike, Youkuro, Jen," he greeted. "We have a new case. Well, new in a sense," Youkuro said before Jethro even had a chance to take a seat. "What do you mean?" the werewolf asked. "I mean the pack has been responsible for another murder. We're going to get the body now," Youkuro explained. Another murder? Jethro's heart fell in despair. He had prayed that they would leave and they would never hear from them again. No, he realized how foolish it was to hope for such a thing. "Jethro, you're with me. Jen, you and Mike gas the van," Youkuro said in a very take-charge way. The redhead nodded, and she and Mike headed for the garage while he and Jethro went to the elevator. "You sure you want to be in this one?" he asked. Jethro nodded. "If we're going to find them, I'm your man," he stated. Youkuro smiled. "Let's hope you're right." The body was so badly damaged you could barely tell if it was male or female. It had been ripped open, and many of the organs lay strewed about the forest floor. The only way you could tell it was female was by the small frame and delicate features. "Oh, you poor girl," Ducky whispered, crouching next to her, sympathy in his eyes. "According to the ID the park ranger gave us, her name is Sawyer Allison, and she jogged around here regularly." There has never been any attacks like this, and he thought it was a bear till he saw the tracks. She pointed at the large paw prints leading away from the body. Werewolf tracks, Youkuro confirmed. One and the same. There's blood in them, although if they're from the wolves or the Vic is anybody's guess, Jenny continued. We'll know when we get the blood back to the lab, Mike said, and began to scout the area. Jen, sketches. Jethro, photos, the vampire said, and then went to kneel by Ducky. Think they can get along this time? There was a crack of wood, a scuffling sound, and Youkuro looked up to see Jen had tripped and fallen, taking Jethro with her. That had started an argument. You clumsy... I fell over a branch, and you were in the way. Well, if you paid attention, Ducky chuckled. Obviously not, he said. Then a smile crept to his lips. What about a little wager? Never thought you a betting man, Duck, Youkuro chuckled. Well, I'm not, but a friendly bet between friends never hurt anyone, the Englishman laughed. And what's the bet? Youkuro asked. 2 bets. One is whether it's you or Jethro who catches the wolves first. The second is how long it takes Jennifer and Jethro to admit they like each other, he replied. They like each other? He looked over at the squabbling pair. Love shows itself in many different forms, Ducky said sagely. If I win? Youkuro asked. I'll buy your coffee for a year, Ducky stated. And if you win? I think I'd like to commission a portrait. Whatever you're up to drawing, he beamed, and Youkuro smiled. Lemmy knew he was an artist, and knew how coveted his works were. It's a deal, Youkuro said, and he and Ducky shook hands to seal the accord. This story was written by j9y at deviantart.com. Go to j9y.deviantart.com to find her gallery for more writing.